Hello and welcome back to the channel, guys. I hope you're having a fantastic day. We're here, we are going to play some Nuclearis, and if you haven't heard about this game, it's cool. It's all about running and operating your own nuclear reactor facility. Let's hope it doesn't go horribly wrong. So here we are in the control room of what is our very own nuclear power plant. So this game has been out in early access for a couple of months already. It's had quite a bit of significant updates in terms of my play already. As you can see here, we've had 49 days without incident, and I can already assure you that that is pretty much since we've began playing this game. Now again, this game is pretty much a new feature on the channel. We certainly haven't played it before, so if you have seen this game, probably you haven't seen it in this entirety, this version. It's the latest version, I think, came out only a couple of days ago. So just to run through, what we have is again in this new update is we have this new panel over here, which is the freight circuit panel. Within the options, you do have the option of enabling the chemical module, and within that, that adds an extra complexity of gameplay, and that panel is situated over here, but for the sake of this quick run through, I've not enabled that. So whilst this isn't starting afresh, this is essentially what you do start out with. There's nothing in here in terms of physics wise or control panels that you unlock or anything like that. This is very much how the game starts, bar a few exceptions. You only start off with one cooling facility, and that is pretty much the system over there. As the game progresses and you essentially unlock XP, you will have not quite currency, but again, think of it as XP. You will have XP points to buy and upgrade extra items in the plant, such as additional cooling loops, as you can see here, and extra generators and turbines, things like that. So running through the power plant then, it's actually made up of 3 different levels, and we can go on to show you the separate levels shortly. But out here you've got the train station in the distance there. That's how you get to the power plant at the beginning of the game. You come through this path and then you enter the ground floor. So if we go to the ground floor, you'd come through these doors here, as so. Just there, and again, I don't know where this game's supposed to be fictionally based, but it's a place I wouldn't want to live. The reason for that is it never stops raining. Whoa. Nearly got guillotined by the doors there. So, either door, the other side of that wall just there, which leads directly into that corridor we just come from, or this raisable, lowerable, whatever, blast door if you want to call it that. This leads into obviously the reactor hall, and down here in this pool of water, as you can see down there, is the reactor core. Now if, like me, you've never had any insight into how a nuclear reactor really works, the game to some degree is quite easy to follow. Over there we've got the chemical module room. So because I've not got that enabled, this is currently out of bounds, but if you have that enabled, you'd go through that door and that would take you into another room with different chemicals and things like that. But again, I would suggest, if you're playing this game completely from scratch, play without that enabled. It just makes things so much more simpler. But again, if you want a bit of an added challenge, then again, there's nothing wrong with you jumping in and enabling that. So I'm just going to come up these stairs and I'll show you around the plant, and then we'll look at just how to turn on. Like I say, this is very much a quick run through, and we'll probably feature this game on the channel in a bit more detail over the next coming weeks. So this is our fuel core storage. So this here is the fuel good to go, so that's obviously waiting to be put into the reactor, and here is our waste nuclear bins. So this is where the spent nuclear fuel would sit until it's decommissioned. Obviously in real life that would be many thousands of years. In this game, however, it's pretty much between 12 and 24 hours, and then our little AI robot, which I'm sure we'll come across shortly, works his magic and it disappears. Let's hit the button. So again, that's just more stairs up to other areas of plant. So there are things here that we perhaps need to, I would say, keep on top of, making sure the integrity is right so it doesn't break down, as well as the oil pressure in the right place. These stairs, if you follow them all the way around, will take you up into the crane cab up there. So you do have a couple of options when utilising that. You can either use them manually, or you can have that automated. So each valve that we'll look at in the control room does have a manual handle here with a bypass, and again there's valves pretty much on each pipe, and the reason for that is you do have some significant control over valves within this game. So we have our cool internal reservoir, so that's where our coolant will sit until it's needed to be deposited within the power plant. We have our core external pool reservoir, so this is the water that essentially would fill this tank here, and that one over there is the internal side, so the water circuit that is pumped through the reactor system way down there. And this one is just some sort of a pressure relief tank, and again we've got valves on each end. So the concept of power generation, again, I am no scientist, I am no teacher. However, to give you a very quick run through, you basically use the reactor to heat water, that therefore generates steam. Steam is then pumped into this room, which is the turbine room. It goes through, let's just have a look. It'll go through these generators, or should I say turbines, through the turbines. That then in turn moves this big shaft, which then in here turns that into power. That then is wired into this room, the transformer room, and within that is put out to the grid. These here are called our resistor blocks, and you can have, obviously as you can see, up to 4 installed at any one time, and within the 4 you've got these resistor banks. Now the resistor banks will explain slightly more detail a bit later on, but again we've got spare resistor banks there because if you're not careful they can quite easily blow up. And if we come this side of the turbine hall, we have different types of tanks. So we have our steam generators as well as our condenser. So again, you can follow these pipes. They are color coded in the control room if you're not quite sure. And we'll come all the way down here. So from here then, the blue pipes will then go out to release the condensed water out through the cooling towers, which are just over here. You can't use this door sadly, but again if you really wanted to go and see the cooling towers, they're outside, and we'll just pop up and have a quick look at that. Now the decontamination model even is there. So if there is any exposure to smaller amounts of radiation, you can pop in there and get yourself decontaminated. So again, just heading outside. Here are our calling towers. You have one there and one there, as you can see. Obviously the power point at this moment in time is not operational. So we'll go straight to the top floor. That is quite a small area, so there's not much to see up there, but we'll get that done whilst we're having a bit of a tour. And then you head out into here, which is the supply room. So again, this is, if you think of it as a bit of a stock room, storage room, all our spare parts are in here. Not quite sure why they're all on the floor. They're normally on the shelving unit there. But these are fuses for the electrical components downstairs, and again some more there. And as you can see, within inside these lockers are additional storage space for our battery packs. So this is the charger for our AI robot, which again we'll come on to shortly. And this is our cabinet for our battery chargers. So in the event of a power failure, we're able to charge up our AI friend. And again, this is just additional controls in terms of fuses and switches as to what we want to be powered up at any time. Emergency power in the form of batteries. Again, we've got a full case there charged. So again, in the event of our diesel generator running out of power, we will have some basic power to power the vital systems such as the doors, and I think we're able to power certain pumps. So again, within here, this tool will repair any pipes. This is the control rod motors. Diesel, that is some sort of repair tool for our cable system. The electrode box are the rods that fit onto that. What's that? That's an AI battery for our robot, and that's all we've got up here. So again, we have got capacity to have another generator, and again, like the other valves, we've also got our fuel input just there. So again, every door has a control box next to it. You can set the doors to sort of say manually open or manually closing, and you can set that up accordingly. Little buttons here, that just shuts the windows and again opens also. So if we come down the stairs, straight ahead of us you can see our hazmat suit. So that is a suit that we can put on in the event of any emergency or radioactive leak, and that will just help our health bar not deplete as quick as it would without wearing it. And again, in the event of any emergency, you can hit the red button here, which will shut the blast doors there. So again, that should shield us from any radioactivity. So we'll just open that back up, and we can give you a bit of a run through as to what this is. Now again, this is the first time I've looked at the control room in this new update. There's some changes. So these valves here, as I say, there's lots of dials that will operate each valve in the reactor room. But here and now, there's nothing that you need to worry about. Everything should generally remain in the off position. And here again, it is very, very complex sort of set of diagrams, but it's not once you've got the understanding of how this works. So what happens is, and if we stick to circuit B, so we'll follow this L1B route. What we've got is our main reactor. So within the various elements of the nuclear reactor, again, protons, neutrons, absorb, generate heat. Now that's all that we need to know. So the heat will obviously heat the water. That water then is pumped into the steam generator to therefore turn it into steam. The steam, as I say, goes into the generator turbine and begins to turn the turbine. The turbine converts that into essentially mechanical power, which then turns the generator for the power. Now, the sort of almost depleted steam, or the leftover steam, is then put back into the condenser to turn it from steam back into water to return back all the way to the beginning. So that's how that sort of works. Obviously, the water doesn't necessarily leave this circuit, it is just transferred within the condenser. So the condenser cycle, loop, whatever you want to call that, that water essentially passes over or around this circle through the tower. The excess vapor and heat is released through the cooling towers and returned back into the condenser, much cooler again, to absorb the excess heat from here. Is how it works in a nutshell. So this one you shouldn't really have to worry about too much. This is all about the radiation within the building. If you're doing things okay, you really shouldn't have to worry about that. Fuel residue. So at the minute, all of our waste storage are available. We've got nothing in there, nothing pending. This area then, so this is telling us this is our fuel. We have one block of fuel available, which is in position 06. And again, that is the capsule that we showed quite early on. So already, what I've done, we've turned obviously each handle on at each control station, and that's just to give power to the board. So because we are looking at setting up, we need to make sure that this is in the nominal position mode. We've already got our core inserted. This one is a spare. Moving over to the pressurizer. So what we need to do then is we need to activate the heating element. The thermostat is already on, so that means that will handle cutting in and out of the heaters as and when required. So the temperature is building up nicely there, and so is then the pressure. Now the pressure we want ideally to remain about 160. So that will be brought up nicely, but again, it does take some time. And again, we're not going to necessarily need to touch this just yet. We only need to be mindful around this side as if we start overboiling our system, which again, if we're doing things correctly, we shouldn't need to worry about. So this is our internal supply. This is obviously telling us our generator, which is probably directly above us right now. This is telling us that our fuel is a little over just halfway. So once we get the reactor online shortly, again, we won't need to worry about that. And again, different generators. We've only got the one system at the minute, but you can set it to manual or automatic operation. Generator 2, we haven't got the batteries. We can again amend those settings accordingly. So this is just a duplicate of that screen just there. So we want that to remain in and around 160. Which that thermostat on that side should take care for us. So this is sort of one of the main areas that we need to work and concentrate on. So we can come back to this in a second when we're ready, but in short, this operates the reactor core and our control rods. So the coolant system, these are our switches, our on-off switches. So what we'll do is we'll head on and switch on pumps.
The reactor core coolant has started to circulate.
3. And then we'll just switch that down to medium for the time being. And then again, you can see that our pumps are starting to well up and come online. So pump 3 is that one directly ahead of us there. And you can see that is spinning around nicely. So we'll just give that a few seconds to build up. So what these buttons and things do, so these control the speed and the flow of the coolant within the internal reactor. So the load, this puts more water into the condenser system, which is the system down there, and we'll talk about that shortly. Feed water circuit, again that puts water in directly to the reactor system. And this again puts water into the internal primary reservoir and this one into the external, both of which are the reservoirs there and the smaller one just there that we looked at earlier on. So we'll leave that be, but again the control panel here just operates the CCTV within the plant, so just if you needed to check something out, for example the turbine room, if there are any defect machines in here, whilst the graphics aren't the best, you can see that there's smoke or fire, so it just helps you having to run around the plant like a headless chicken. And again, all these screens are up here just to indicate any faults or issues that we may have, and in the event of any alarms or faults or anything like that, what will happen is one of these squares will start to flash or blink, and that will just indicate what area of the plant requires some attention. Once you're happy with the fact that you've acknowledged that, you can hit this blue button here. That will stop the siren sounding as well as any of these screens flashing. However, it's important to note all it will do, it will just stop it flashing, but the light will stay illuminated until that fault is fixed. This screen up here is a bit of a summary of how the plant is performing. As you can see at the minute, the temperature of the core is 14 Celsius. That's probably the state of the normal resting body of water. Rods, we've got 8 rods in place of 100% integrity. The fuel is loaded and the coolant is flowing at 16% at the minute. Now you may say, why is that if we've set it at 50 just here? And that's because obviously it's only at 50 because we don't have the other systems activated to, if we activated each one and stuck it all at 100%, thus that will be 100%. And again, this just gives us the generator speed in terms of percentage. And this one here, this is all about our energy demand. Now, what we need to do, because we're going to bring the reactor online, is just hit tab. We're going to go to the comms section and then we're going to hit start operations. This essentially will send a message to the external electricity company to say that, hey, we're here, we're ready, we want to go online. That generally will take about an hour or so in-game time, and obviously you can see that on the top left corner there, 6:24 currently. You'll also hear a little noise shortly, and that will be almost like an acknowledgement message function, and that will just indicate we've got a message there. So the energy generation area. So in a nutshell, the energy here is what we need to focus on, because once the system is online, we'll be given a demand figure of what we're expected to deliver. Now it's important that we meet that demand, because if we don't, that we don't essentially get paid, or you'll get a sort of pro rata percentage of the payment. So in the early days, more so, you want to make sure you're getting every single XP to add into your bank, because as we upgrade things, and swap things out, it can get rather expensive very, very quickly. So what you won't have in the beginning of the game are 3 systems. Again, this is just because I've upgraded this, and then this is my personal gameplay that we've reviewed today. So how this works then is the water from the core will come over to the steam generator. The steam generator will then do 2 things. pass steam to the generators, but also water to the condenser. So the pump is still nicely whizzing away over there. And then we'll explain how this works. So this is the turbine bypass. So if we are overproducing electricity, that also has a negative effect. And that noise you just heard there with the blue icon on the top right of the screen means we've had a message. So we've received the start of operations, essentially then will be at 700 hours. So 0700 we can start to produce electricity. So, as I was saying, if you overproduce your power, that can have serious consequences on your plant. So much so that you'll see here, and again, when you start off, you only have a tolerance of 5,000 kilowatts. I have 2 modules, so that's given me the absorption capacity of 10,000 kilowatts. That's important to bear in mind, because if we go over this figure, or even if we get close to this figure, that's 10,000 on top of whatever this figure is, our electrical systems start to overheat and can eventually explode. Not good. So it's important that we just bear in mind and monitor this figure. If we start to see these needles go into the amber or the red, again, action, and very urgent action, is needed. So what we'll do then is we'll now start to fill up our steam generator. Not literally right now, but what we would do is we would crank on the system, bang, just like so, and then you can set your speed. So what we ideally want to do is try and have this needle in and around the green area. So the water will be taken from the burning reactor up into this machine there, which is the steam generator. So essentially it'll go up the gold pipe, through the top or the bottom, in through the bottom here, up, down, and return back in. And then obviously the heated steam will go through the green pipe into the next room, which is the turbine room, to start to produce momentum. So again, I'm just going to switch that off, otherwise what will happen is we will flood the steam generator, and that's bad. So again, over here we can just activate the cooling circuit for the condenser. That'll just get things moving. And again, what we just need to bear in mind is if this temperature of the condenser gets too hot, the water within the system will start to boil and therefore turn into steam, which will go out of the towers and essentially will dry up the level of coolant within the condenser and again cause damage down the line. So what we need to do to get the reactor cooking is we have to drop the percentage of rod height. I mean, it's slightly backwards in that in order for us to drop the value means that we are lifting physically the rods out of the reactor. So in a second, what we're saying is if we then say 95 set, gives us a little shortcut cutscene. But what's happening now is those control rods are coming out only by 5%, because obviously what we're telling that computer there, or the keypad, is that we want 95% of the control rod remaining in the reactor. So what you can see is our reactivity dial there has already raised. So when it's completely on the left hand side, that means nothing is happening, everything's stable. We've now got the internal temperature raising, and then once that goes past 55 degrees, that is when it becomes radioactive and the temperature will absolutely rocket. So again, we've got green indication lights there, another cutscene with a short flash, bang. So there we go, the reactor core now is online, it is radioactive.
The reactor has reached critical mass. Ignited status has changed to reactive.
So there we go. So now this dial over here has gone way over the green threshold. Ideally, to keep it stable, we need that dial to remain in the green. But whilst we're waiting for the reactor to warm up, it's important that we let that slide over just so we can get that nice and warm for where we need it to be. So again, we try and keep this around 360 degrees so we can let that warm up rather nicely. So the variables on this reactivity, if we was to keep the rod height at 95 and add more water movement over the reactor, that will also reduce the reactivity. And again, with the chemical module enabled, you are able to completely pull out the rod height to essentially 0 and manage the reactivity and the xenon with additional chemicals such as boron and things like that. But again, as already stressed, that is quite enhanced and complicated, so I would suggest have a look at this game, get the basic principles understood before we look at any further implementation. So the temperature now, we're looking at 150 degrees now, so about halfway there, just under as to where we want it to be. So because we've gone over the 0700 hours, we're now at 0714, it's now indicated starting, so that means that we're able to put out onto the grid without any further issues. So you can already see at the minute our power transformers are only capable of providing 26,350 kilowatts as indicated there. So that's the maximum output we can put through our power transformers without having any consequence. So we've got that coming up nicely over there. And again, just to speed that up, what we can do is we can say move that to 90. It's important to note the rods don't instantaneously move, they do take a bit of time, as you can see. 92, 90. When the rods get really hot and this needle is in the red, these literally do take a couple of minutes to move, so just bear that in mind. Any emergency situations, a couple of things. There's an emergency stop there, as well as the scram, and that essentially will move the control rods to 100%, i.e. they are inserted 100%, not removed 100%. It's important that you don't forget that. So the height has now been met, so we're at 90 and the temperature has picked up a little bit more pace, so we are coming up to that 360, and when we get to about 310 we shall perhaps adjust the height just to slow that reactivity down somewhat. So we've got some icons already up there indicating no steam, so we will just switch on cycle 3. Right, so we're at 310. Let's pop that to say 96. So that will reduce that a little bit. And a little bit more. So we are still climbing. If you right click over any of the dials, they will give you a bit of information and the value. So that's currently at 12.75. Now the perfect balance is 10, so we are somewhat higher than where we would like to be. So again, what we'll do is we'll just go 98, which will insert the rod slightly more. So 10.68, we'll keep that as is. We can finesse the little minor detail shortly, but again we just need a little bit more heat, so we're happy to keep it there. So again, as demonstrated then, we've got 2 flashing lights there, and that's just telling us that there is no coolant in either of the steam generators 1 or 2. Again, we're aware of that because we haven't got the pump switched on. So what happens now? you'll see that our condenser level has reduced slightly because obviously we're shifting some of this coolant into or back into the steam generator there, so that's perfectly fine, but again we just need to monitor that. So the steam generator 3, it is slowly picking up. The noise you've heard there is indicating that the generator is picking up and coming online. So the synchronizer then, that is obviously going very fast in the opposite direction. What we need to do is just make sure that is in sync, and we will do that shortly, but we just need to give the generators some time to come online before we look to sort that. And again, we can open the circuit breaker just so that the output doesn't go out anywhere, but again just be mindful if you do that, that will start to warm up our resistors. But for the time being, I'm happy that that can be closed and any power we are outputting can go straight onto the grid. Generators, I would suggest here, do not really mess with. So the noise there to me suggests that everything is picking up nicely. We've got torque within the generator, the temperature is coming up nicely, as is the pressure, but the pressure's dropped this end, so what we'll do is we'll simply hit the right one, add some more coolant into the mix, which should start to pick up the level, thus in more pressure. Yeah, so that's picking up good. Now, what we might find is that to generate 21,000 kilowatts or 22,000 is going to take some heat. So we might need to bring in another cycle. So we'll switch on pump 2. Again, that will put more water over the reactor down there. So to combat that, what we're going to have to do, perhaps, as you can see now, technically the reactor is cooling down. So we just need to remove the cooling rod somewhat more. So let's go, say, with 97 and reassess. So that's brought up a little bit more. But it's important to note that because the pumps aren't fully primed, look, that's still priming up. We need to make sure that that is pretty much both what's ordered to what it's delivering. So somewhere about there. So again, we can reassess, that's still low. So if we go to say 96, that'll pull the rod out a little bit more. And we're still low there. So we'll go to, let's go 95. Hit the wrong key, 95. So there we go, we're just over, I'm happy with that. We can cool, well, it'll start to cool down slowly. So there we are. Right, we've now got 2 pumps online. So 2 pumps at 50% running over the reactor. So therefore we're going to have to start up the second steam generator. So again, that should pretty much give us twice the amount of generated kilowatts. So now we're at 7:59 in terms of time. Once we get to 8 o'clock, that starting will then change like it has. So we are now required to comply with what we're doing. If we don't, we will not get any XP. And just to show the objectives of the day. So if we go into objectives, this is telling us then that today we need to maintain the integrity of all models for 8 hours. So as long as nothing goes bang, we'll get 68,000 XP points. and we need to achieve a minimum service compliance of 90%, and that is obviously throughout the day, for an additional 61,920 XP points. But then what we'll get is we also do get an hourly rate, if you like, for achieving compliance for that hour. So comes 9 o'clock, we need to be pretty much in or around that demand figure for us to get the hourly rate, which again will become clear shortly. So generator 2 is now being brought online. So what we'll do is over here, we don't want to do that one. Right, so as you can see now, we are over what the system is asking. So that automatically now has shifted the difference onto the resistor bank. So we are currently 1,600 kilowatts over. Obviously well within the 10,000 kilowatts, so that's fine, that is manageable. But you may also think, well, the maths don't work with the numbers of demand to generated and the excess. The reason for that is obviously we take a little bit of power to power our internal components, and in this case 154.8 kilowatts. So we take that amount of kilowatts before that gets put out onto the grid. So that is the reason for the difference there. So again, we can enable the resistor switches just here. So if we didn't want any sort of overload facility, we can switch them all off. Again, I'm not really sure why you would need those. Now in previous models, there was an additional panel down here for us to enable the synchroscope. Now, I'm not quite sure how we do that now. We've got the lower the voltage as well as the raise lower generator. We could perhaps try that. No, it's not working. Okay. But again, that in theory should be synced, and to sync that you would slow it down to bring the direction of lights over to here, and you'd stop it pretty much when it's there to suggest that that is in sync with the output. But again, this is just an overview, and I'll do some more digging before we do further videos. So already, as you can see, we had 3 lights on there. These 2 have gone off because we've fixed what the sign is telling us is the problem. So we move on to the condenser then. So as you can see, the temperature here is 52.6 currently. That is rising, so what we need to do to counter that is just turn up the speed of the flow, just to take the heat out of the condenser system. So we're at 52.75, 52.67. So now that's starting to whirl up, that will cool down the condenser system. So, what do we do now, you may think? So, the demand that the PowerPoint is asked of, it does change. it changes on a daily basis, and it changes on an hourly basis. So once this goes past 9 o'clock, this will start to increase, generally up until about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, where it then tails off and it's almost down peak. And then when we're sort of in the overnight period, early hours of the morning, it's quite low. So, you know, we're constantly having to make adjustments to the reactor to ensure that we are A, keeping up with demand, but then B, ensuring that we're not putting too much out and burning up the resistor bank. So what we can do is we can go down, have a look, check out the plant and reactor in process. And we'll go to level 0. And if, like me, you was really excited to see, oh, I wonder what happens, can we go into the reactor core when it's online? Well, yes you can. It's important to note in this game, you can't swim. If you go into that water, you die. Likewise, there is a bit of an issue around the fall height. If you fall from sort of any general height, again, you're likely to die, so just be really mindful around that. But again, you can see exactly what's happening with the reactor. The flow of the water diffuses and diffracts the actual visibility, which again, I would say is quite realistic. What you can do is once the core system has been all drained, which there is a button up there which I think about it, I did forget to mention, but you can remove all of this water, and at times you'll be required to remove all of this water because there's bits and bobs down there on the reactor that you're going to need to make repairs on. So again, it's important that we know how we do that and at what time. So right, the reason I stopped talking so abruptly there was because I thought I heard a noise which would suggest that there's a valve that's either open or closed, but I don't think it was towards the end. So if we move into the generation room then. So again, the only mechanical parts that you're able to see are obviously the pumps over there on the other side. But there's the main shaft that you can see rotating nicely, and again it just goes into the machine down there. Now these machines are quite loud, so apologies if you're struggling with the audio. So within this game, on the main menu page, there are a couple of scenarios that you can try and play. One of those is the nuclear power plant is about to be hit with a tidal surge. So again, the bottom floor is completely flooded, so you have to make some preparations for basically running the plant underwater, which in theory all you do is you shut the blast door into the turbine hall down there, and then this will run whilst flooded, bizarrely. But there we are. That's a bit of a spoiler, I suppose. So we're nearly at 9 o'clock, and what we'll do is we'll just hit the 3 key, and that will put us on ×3 speed, so we can speed up. It's not the fastest time speed, just be mindful. So there we go. For this hour, we've earned 61,920 XP points, and that is just because we've maintained our target. So again, you can quickly see that if you don't maintain your targets, the knock-on effect of not having 61,000 XP points can have a bit of an impact. So there we go. What we'll look to do is completely reverse what we've done now and do what's known as a shutdown. So in order to do said shutdown, we have to do a few things. And before I forget, this is the switch to remove the water in the outer core. So again, we've got the remove or load option. Remove obviously drains, load will fill. So in order to shut down, what do we need to do? We go onto tab, we go comms, and we say we would like to do a shutdown. So again, shortly we'll get confirmation of the shutdown request. But it's important to note that in terms of our daily objectives, if we was to stop the plant almost instantaneously now, that would ruin our compliance for the whole day. Whereas if you do a scheduled shutdown, as long as you do things in the right time frames, you aren't scrutinized. So again, just bear that in mind. So we'll await that confirmation before we start our shutdown procedure. And there is the notification telling us at 11 o'clock. So again, this is an hour and 20. So we'll just have to start running things down. So what we can do probably about 10 o'clock is we shall completely remove the rod height issue. So we'll turn that to 100, which therefore will insert the rods 100%. So we'll do it about now. We'll hit the scram button just to demonstrate that. So that will give us a notification on this message pane there, scram. And that will automatically then request that these are brought up. And again, we've entered a new hour. That's given us another objective. You don't get them every hour, but again, we do get the bits and the bobs right. So again, the control rods now aren't illuminated down there. Bit of a glitch because it says that they're at 95%. But that shouldn't be the case, because as it says here, they are inserted 100%. But again, the value now is at 7, so that's 3 below the 10. Therefore, we are in the cooling down side of the reactivity. And that's represented over here. As you can see, we're now cooling down quite rapidly. We're at 360 thereabouts, and already we're at 180. So again, if we wanted to increase this cooling off period, if you like, all we need to do is we just hit the fast button there. That will activate both these cooling cycles and request full output, which will cool this down just here. So again, we also then need to switch off our steam generator. And again, we can just switch off the condenser. So again, that pool down there is physically looking relatively stable. Obviously there's no heat bubbles or, you know, pools of water coming out. So we're approaching that 55 mark now. Again, once we go below 55, the reactivity will stop. And there we go, the reactivity has stopped. You can see it's dropped to minus there. We're in red, indicating there is no core reactivity. So what we do need to do now is just run the pumps for a bit, because what will happen is inevitably, once we stop the water pumps, the core is still hot in itself, so the internal temperature will start to climb, and inevitably, due to reaching that 55-degree mark, will activate the reactivity once more. So I would suggest just keeping the pumps running for an hour or so. But what we can do now is we can come over here, we can switch off our heating elements, and that will therefore cause the pressure within the vessel to also drop. And then it's just a reverse cycle of shutting down all the control panels. Missed that one. You know, I like the detail. I like how it all shuts down in the little segments as opposed to just shutting off. So that's now going to knock off the water, but I'm happy with that for demonstration purposes. Nice and cool anyway. I will leave that one on just so I can monitor that. And again, we'll switch off the pressure system and also the core system. In fact, what I will do before the video's out is I'll show you a couple of other things. So we've activated that one again. We will switch this into shutdown mode. And we can turn that off now. I'm happy with that. So if we reactivate this panel, I will show you the remove. So we've popped that on. Again, quite noisy. The graphics and physics of this isn't the greatest. The water literally does drop like that as opposed to a nice smooth transition. It does drop almost in stages, which is sad to see. But anyway, the water, as you can see, is draining from there. What I'll do is I'll go and switch off the pumps.
The reactor core coolant has stopped circulating.
So if we leave pumps on for too long, i.e. say that one there, if we leave it on for a large amount of time and it's not actually pumping anything, again we do burn the pump out. It's just worth bearing that in mind. And then we can see from over here the level is dropping, so it's at 25%. Once that's at 0 or thereabouts, we'll knock the pump off and then we'll go down and take a look. 6.4. There we go, right. We'll switch that off. And then what we'll look to do is over here, we can extract from core, he says. What's the issue? Power that back up. Energy distribution required. There we go. Right, that's now released radiation. That normally doesn't happen, so let's put that back in.
New operating mode established. Nominal mode.
Yes, that normally doesn't happen. That must be a new thing. But previously, so what we'll do very quickly before I go downstairs is we'll put on the hazmat suit. And hopefully we're not going to die as I show you what I'm about to show you. But yeah, normally that doesn't happen, but the core has been ejected. So because we're wearing the hazmat suit, apparently we're not being radioactively poisoned. It's not ideal showing you this with the hazmat suit, but here we are, we're at the bottom of the reactor core pool, whatever you call it. And this is where then we can change the motors for the control rods up above us. And yeah, we can walk all the way around with the radioactive gases above us. So as I say, in the ideal world, we'll probably now have to decontaminate ourselves. That's probably because we are so that is decontaminating us now. Come on then, open up, let us out. Are you going to let us out? There we go. So what we'll do is we'll pop off the hazmat suit there. Real. So, what we'd then do to fix that core issue is we would remove that by calling in we'd dial in the number there, the crane will automatically come over, come down, pick up the capsule and put it in the waste storage site, the other side of that wall over there, and then we would ask it to load in number 1 and deposit. And then it's just a case of activating this once we've filled the water back up as shown at the start of this video. So like I say, probably a little longer than planned, but that is a very quick run through of Nuclearies. It's a game all about running your own power plant. Like I say, it's got a game, well, it is a game with lots and lots of potential, even more so once the chemical module has been fixed. There was a few glitches to say the least, probably why it's not sort of set as open. But again, if you do like this video, then please hit that like button. Consider subscribing for future videos like this and of other playthroughs. Other than that, you've been watching Game Junkie. Thank you very much.